The communications array in Geneva detected them first. 3 massive vessels appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, their energy signatures so powerful that every telescope and sensor on the planet immediately swung toward them. Within minutes, governments around the world received the same terrifying message. Earth was no longer alone, and whoever had found them did not come in peace. Ambassador Krell stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Will, and looked at the small blue planet on his view screen. He felt nothing but mild contempt. Another primitive world, another simple conquest. In his 3 centuries of service to the sovereign dominion, he had delivered this same ultimatum to 47 different species. Most surrendered immediately. A few resisted and were destroyed. None had ever surprised him. "Begin the broadcast," Krell commanded, his 4 arms folding across his chest in a gesture of absolute authority. The transmission reached every communication device on Earth simultaneously. Radios crackled to life, television broadcasts were interrupted, and cell phones buzzed with an emergency alert that made billions of hearts stop. The message was simple and devastating. "People of Earth, I am Ambassador Krell of the Sovereign Dominion. Your world has been discovered and evaluated. You are a primitive species that has not achieved faster-than-light travel. You have no colonies beyond this single planet. You possess no weapons that can threaten our vessels. In the name of the Dominion, which rules 10,000 worlds across this galaxy, I offer you one choice. Surrender your world and accept integration into the Dominion, or be destroyed. You have 72 hours to comply. This is your only warning." The broadcast ended. Across Earth, chaos erupted. In Washington, the president sat in the Situation Room surrounded by generals and advisors who had no answers. "Can we even reach them?" the president asked, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "No, sir," the chairman of the Joint Chiefs replied. "Our most advanced missiles can't break orbit with enough fuel to reach their position. Our weapons are useless." In Moscow, Beijing, London, Delhi, and every other capital, similar conversations took place. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for war against each other, never imagining that the real threat would come from above. Fighter jets couldn't reach space. Nuclear weapons couldn't target ships in orbit. Humanity's vast military might was suddenly, terrifyingly irrelevant. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Delegates shouted over each other in a dozen languages, but the conclusion was the same in all of them. Earth had no defense. Surrender seemed inevitable, but in a secured bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, a very different conversation was taking place. The room was small and austere, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast no shadows. 13 people sat around a plain metal table. They represented no governments, held no official titles, and their names appeared in no public records. They were the Council of the Veil, and they had been waiting for this day for nearly 200 years. Director Sarah Chen, a small woman in her 70s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, placed her hands flat on the table. "Confirmation?" she asked simply. "Confirmed," replied a man with a thick Russian accent. "Dominion vessels. 3 capital ships, standard intimidation formation. They have no idea what we are." "Have they scanned beyond the inner solar system?" Chen asked. "No. They're focused entirely on Earth. As far as they know, we're exactly what we appear to be. A single-planet species with primitive technology." Chen allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Then the veil holds. How long until our assets can respond?" A woman with dark skin and the bearing of a military officer consulted a tablet. "The nearest fleet group is 48 hours out. The main armada needs 70 hours. Too long," another council member objected. "The ultimatum expires in 72 hours. We'll have almost no margin for error." Chen's smile didn't waver. "Then we stall. By every hour we can. Prepare the transmission." "Director, once we send this, the veil ends," the Russian delegate said quietly. "Earth will know. Everything will know." "The veil served its purpose," Chen replied. "It kept Earth safe while we built what was needed. But they've come to our door now. It's time for the galaxy to learn what humanity really is." She stood and the others followed. "Send the message. All frequencies. Authorization Omega-7 Alpha. Tell them to come home." 2 hours after Krell's ultimatum, a strange thing happened. Earth's governments, who had spent the morning in panic and despair, suddenly became very calm. They requested a dialogue with Ambassador Krell. They asked for clarification of terms. They proposed negotiations. They were, to Krell's experienced eye, clearly stalling for time. He allowed it. Fear made primitives do irrational things. Let them grasp at hope for a few more hours. The result would be the same. What Krell didn't know was that his sensor officers had detected something unusual 17 minutes after arriving in the system. A brief energy pulse on an ancient electromagnetic frequency, the kind that primitive species used before developing quantum communications. It had originated from Earth and radiated outward in all directions. The sensor officer had reported it and Krell had dismissed it. A desperate message to colonies that didn't exist. A cry for help that would reach no one. It meant nothing. He was wrong. The message had been simple. Olympus Protocol. Activate. All fleets return to Sol. Authorization, Omega-7 Alpha. In the darkness between stars, in places so remote that no Dominion ship had ever ventured, receivers picked up that ancient signal. Computers that had been waiting in silence for 2 centuries suddenly came to life. Alarms sounded in ships that had never been seen by outsiders. Orders were given in dozens of hidden colonies scattered across the void. Humanity was coming home. On a world called New Prometheus, orbiting a red dwarf star 90 light-years from Earth, Admiral Marcus Chen received the signal in his quarters. He was a tall man with the lean build of someone born in low gravity. His dark hair shot through with gray despite being only 50 years old. He had never set foot on Earth. He had been born here, in the deep dark, as had his parents before him. But he knew Earth. Every child born in the void colonies learned about the home world. They studied its history, its cultures, its beauty. They were taught that their entire civilization existed for one purpose: to protect that distant blue world from ever suffering what their ancestors had witnessed. Marcus had been 12 years old when his grandfather told him the story. The old man had been one of the first void-born, raised on the earliest colony ships. He remembered the day humanity encountered the Dominion. It had been a small exploration vessel, venturing into what they thought was empty space. They found a Dominion patrol instead. The patrol was disciplining a rebellious species, glassing their colony world from orbit while broadcasting the screams as a warning to others. Humanity's ship had watched from the darkness, too small and weak to intervene. They had recorded everything and fled back to human space. When they showed the recordings to Earth's governments, the decision was made. Earth would go dark. No more broadcasts into space. No more expansion that could be traced back to the home world. To any observer, Earth would appear to be a primitive species that had never left its cradle. But in the darkness beyond, in the spaces between stars where no one looked, humanity would build. They would prepare. And if anyone ever threatened Earth, they would learn what a species could accomplish when motivated by memory and fear. Marcus touched the medallion he wore around his neck, a small disk of metal that contained dust from Earth, brought to New Prometheus by the first colonists. Every void-born human wore one, a reminder of what they fought for. He pressed the intercom on his desk. "All hands, this is the Admiral. Olympus Protocol is active. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We're going home." Across the void, the same scene played out on 500 worlds, ships that had been built in secret dockyards, crewed by people who existed in no official records, began their journey toward Sol. They moved in perfect silence, their black hulls absorbing all radiation, invisible to the sensors of species that didn't know to look for them. The Black Armada was coming. On Earth, the 72 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Governments continued their stalling tactics, inventing reasons for delays and requesting endless clarifications. Krell grew impatient but not suspicious. He had seen this before. The desperate bargaining of the doomed. The media filled with debates about surrender terms. Some argued for complete capitulation to save lives. Others demanded resistance, even if futile. Religious leaders offered prayers. Scientists worked frantically on weapons they knew couldn't be finished in time. The world watched the clock and waited for the end. Only a select few knew the truth. In bunkers and secured facilities around the world, the Council of the Veil monitored the approaching fleet. The greatest secret in human history was about to be revealed, and there was no going back. Sarah Chen hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood in the operations center, watching the tactical display that showed the positions of Earth, Krell's ships, and the converging armada that was still invisible to Dominion sensors. "Status?" she asked quietly. 70 hours, 14 minutes since the ultimatum, her aide replied. "First fleet elements will arrive in 6 hours. Main armada in 8 hours. We're cutting it close, Director. We always do, Chen murmured. She looked at the blue marble of Earth on the display. So small and vulnerable. For 200 years, the Veil had kept this secret. Humanity had lived a lie, appearing weak while becoming strong. The Voidborn had sacrificed normal lives, living in hidden colonies, raising children who would never see Earth's sun, all to protect the homeworld they'd never known. Now that protection would be tested. Krell stood on his bridge as the final hours ticked away. 71 hours, 58 minutes. In 2 minutes, the ultimatum would expire and he would begin the bombardment. He would destroy a few cities, nothing too excessive, just enough to show the consequences of defiance. Then the primitives would surrender, as they always did. Ambassador, we're detecting unusual gravitational distortions, his sensor officer reported. Where? Krell asked, mildly interested. Everywhere, sir. Hundreds of them, all around our position. It's as if... The officer stopped. On the main view screen, the stars began to disappear. Not from clouds or cosmic dust, but from something solid moving between Krell's ships and the distant suns. Shapes materialized from nothing, black against the black of space, visible only because they blotted out the starlight behind them. Ships. Thousands of ships. They appeared in perfect formation, surrounding Krell's 3 vessels in a sphere of silent metal. They were like nothing in the Dominion database. Sleek and dark, bristling with weapons, moving with an eerie coordination that spoke of centuries of practice. Krell's translator console lit up with an incoming transmission. A face appeared on his screen. A human face, lean and hard, belonging to a man who had never known the softness of planetary life. Ambassador Krell, Admiral Marcus Chen said, his voice absolutely calm. You have threatened our homeworld. There will be no negotiation. Krell stared at the human in disbelief. This is impossible. You have no fleet. Our intelligence, your intelligence, Marcus interrupted, knows nothing about us. You thought we were alone on that planet. That was your first mistake. You threatened our cradle. That will be your last. Krell's hands moved frantically over his controls. All ships, open fire. Call for... His words were cut off as the darkness erupted with light. The year was 1823, and no one on Earth suspected that humanity was about to change forever. Dr. James Morrison worked in a small laboratory in Edinburgh, Scotland, conducting experiments that his colleagues considered pointless. He was trying to prove a wild theory about the relationship between electromagnetic fields and the fabric of space itself. Most scientists of the era thought he was wasting his time. On the night of March 15th, Morrison activated his experimental apparatus, a complex arrangement of copper coils, lodestones, and a new electrical battery design. He intended to measure tiny fluctuations in local gravity. Instead, his equipment vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, simply ceased to exist in that location. Morrison stood in his laboratory, staring at the empty space where thousands of pounds of equipment had been, and felt his hands begin to shake. He checked his instruments. The power draw had spiked for exactly 1.3 seconds, and then everything had stopped. His equipment was gone. 3 days later, a British naval vessel found Morrison's apparatus floating in space above the dark side of the moon. The crew had seen a flash of light and investigated, finding the copper coils and batteries tumbling slowly in the void, still warm from Earth's atmosphere. The ship's captain, a man named Sir Thomas Blackwood, understood immediately that what he had witnessed must never become public knowledge. He brought Morrison's equipment back to Earth in secret and personally delivered it to the British Prime Minister. Within a week, Morrison was brought to London under armed guard. You've discovered faster-than-light travel, the Prime Minister told him flatly. By accident, Morrison could barely speak. That's impossible. The equipment only disappeared for seconds. It traveled to the moon in those seconds, Doctor. Do you understand what this means? Morrison understood. Within a month, a secret committee was formed. Representatives from Britain, France, Russia, and the United States met in a sealed room and made a decision that would shape the next 2 centuries. The discovery of FTL travel would be classified at the highest possible level. No public announcement would be made. No patents filed. No scientific papers published. Instead, they would build in secret. The reasoning was simple. Earth was divided by war, competition, and mistrust. If FTL travel became public knowledge, nations would race to exploit it, weaponize it, and use it against each other. The technology was too powerful to be unleashed on a fractured world. But more than that, The committee members understood something that most people didn't. If humanity could travel faster than light, then others could too. And if Earth announced its presence to the universe by broadcasting radio signals and expanding openly into space, there was no guarantee that what found them would be friendly. So they created the Veil. It started small, a handful of scientists and engineers working in hidden facilities. Morrison's accidental FTL effect was studied, refined, and eventually understood. By 1835, humanity had built its first true starship, a ugly, boxy vessel called the Pioneer. It left Earth's solar system on a cold November night, visible only to a few dozen people who knew to look for it. The Pioneer traveled 12 light-years in 3 weeks and found a rocky planet orbiting a small orange star. The world was barely habitable, thin atmosphere, weak gravity, constant storms. The crew named it New Hope and claimed it for humanity. They also made it disappear. No broadcasts announced the colony. No transmissions revealed its location. The people who volunteered to settle New Hope knew they were leaving Earth forever, becoming ghosts to maintain the secret. They went willingly, understanding that their sacrifice kept Earth safe. Over the next 50 years, the pattern repeated. Secret colony ships left Earth carrying volunteers who vanished from official records. New Hope was followed by New Prometheus, then Liberty, then Sanctuary, then dozens more. The colonies were established in the emptiest regions of space, far from any obvious stellar landmarks in places no one would think to look. By 1875, humanity had 23 colony worlds and a population of nearly 2 million people living beyond Earth. Not one person on the home world, outside the Veil, knew they existed. The Veil itself evolved into something more than a simple secret-keeping organization. It became a shadow government, funded by classified budgets from a dozen nations, staffed by people who officially didn't exist. Its mission was simple: keep Earth dark while the void colonies grew strong enough to protect it. Then, in 1889, humanity learned why the Veil was necessary. The exploration ship Galileo was surveying a system 40 light-years from Earth. When its sensors detected something impossible, massive energy signatures, consistent with industrial civilization, humanity had found alien life. Captain Elizabeth Ward ordered the Galileo to stealth mode and approached carefully. What she found made her blood run cold. A planet was dying. The world had once supported a technological civilization: cities, spaceports, orbital stations. Now those cities were burning. The orbital stations were debris. And in high orbit, a fleet of alien warships was systematically destroying everything that moved. Ward recorded everything. The alien ships were huge, powerful, and utterly merciless. They broadcast a message on all frequencies as they worked, a message the Galileo's computers struggled to translate. The sovereign dominion does not tolerate rebellion. Let this world serve as an example to others who would defy our authority. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. By the time it ended, the planet below was a burning wasteland. The Dominion fleet departed without ever knowing the Galileo was watching from the shadows. Ward brought the recordings back to Earth and presented them to the Veil Council. The members watched in silence as the alien world died. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, the director of the Veil, a French diplomat named Henri Beaumont, stood. "Gentlemen, ladies, we now know what waits for us in the galaxy. This Dominion, whatever it is, has the power to destroy worlds. If they find Earth." "They won't," interrupted a young woman named Sarah Chen, newly appointed to the council. "Because we're going to make sure Earth stays invisible." That meeting changed everything. The Veil's mission expanded from simple secrecy to active protection. Earth would not just hide, it would appear primitive, incapable of spaceflight, unworthy of attention. All human expansion would happen in the deepest dark, in places the Dominion would never think to look. More importantly, humanity would build an invisible military force. If the Dominion ever did find Earth, they would encounter not a helpless planet, but a species that had spent generations preparing for exactly that moment. The Void colonies embraced this mission with grim determination. New Prometheus became an industrial center, its factories hidden in asteroid belts and deep caves. Liberty specialized in military research, developing weapons in secret laboratories. Sanctuary became a shipyard, constructing vessels that would never see sunlight. Children born in the Void colonies grew up knowing they existed for one purpose: to be Earth's hidden shield. They learned the homeworld's history, studied its cultures, and were taught that their entire civilization was built on sacrifice. They would live in darkness so Earth could remain in light. The strategy worked. For the next century and a half, humanity expanded through the void while Earth remained apparently primitive. Radio broadcasts from Earth were carefully managed to sound like a species that had never left its planet. Television signals were controlled. No satellites were visible to deep space observers. To anyone watching from outside the solar system, Earth looked like a pre-spaceflight civilization. Interesting but not threatening. Meanwhile, in the darkness, humanity built an empire. By 2025, there were 500 colony worlds, scattered across 200 light-years of space. The void-born population reached 40 billion, more than 5 times Earth's population. They lived on planets Earth's people didn't know existed, spoke languages Earth had never heard, and developed cultures shaped by the unique demands of hiding an entire civilization. The Black Armada grew alongside the colonies. Starting with a few dozen converted civilian ships, it evolved into a fleet of thousands. The vessels were designed for stealth and overwhelming firepower. Their hulls were coated in materials that absorbed sensor radiation. Their engines produced minimal signatures. They could travel through a Dominion patrol route and never be detected. The people who crewed these ships were born for war. They trained from childhood in tactics and strategy. They studied every scrap of intelligence about the Dominion that human scouts could gather. They knew the enemy's ship classes, weapons capabilities, and tactical doctrines better than most Dominion officers. And they waited. The Veil maintained its vigil over Earth, now led by Sarah Chen's granddaughter, also named Sarah. The younger Chen had inherited her grandmother's position and her determination. She had spent her entire life maintaining the lie that kept Earth safe. The Void colonies developed their own culture, distinct from Earth but forever tied to it. Every child wore a medallion containing dust from the homeworld. Every ship carried Earth's coordinates as a sacred trust. Every colony had a memorial listing the names of those who had left Earth to build the Veil, pioneers who gave up everything so that billions could live in ignorant safety. The Voidborn sometimes wondered what it would be like to live on Earth, to breathe unfiltered air, to see a blue sky, to walk in rain. But they knew these were dreams they would likely never fulfill. Their purpose was to stay hidden, to remain strong, to be the sword that Earth would never know it possessed. Until the day the Dominion came. When Ambassador Krell's ships appeared in Earth's solar system, the Veil's sensors detected them immediately. Sarah Chen stood in the operations center, watching the 3 Dominion vessels take up position near Earth, and felt 200 years of preparation crystallize into a single moment. "This is what we were built for," she said quietly. The Olympus Protocol activated. Across 500 worlds, the Black Armada received its orders. Every ship, every weapon, every void-born human who had trained for this moment suddenly had a purpose that went beyond drills and exercises. They were going home to protect a world most of them had never seen. Admiral Marcus Chen commanded the nearest fleet group, 200 ships based out of New Prometheus. He was Sarah Chen's cousin, though they had never met in person. The Veil kept Earthside and Voidside leadership separate to protect both sides of the secret. Marcus had always known this day might come. Every Voidborn human did. They lived with the understanding that somewhere, on a distant blue world, billions of people went about their lives never knowing they were protected by an invisible shield. Now that shield would become a sword. "All ships prepare for transit," Marcus ordered. "We're not going to let them touch our homeworld." Around him, his bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. They were all Voidborn, all volunteers, all ready for this. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing Earth's position, so far away yet suddenly feeling very close. His great-grandmother had been one of the first to leave Earth, back in the early days of the Veil. She had written a letter before departing, sealed in the family archives. Marcus had read it once years ago, and one line had stayed with him. "We go into darkness so they can remain in light. This is not a sacrifice. This is love." The Black Armada jumped toward Earth, and the galaxy's balance of power shifted without anyone realizing it yet. The first shot came from Krell's flagship, a brilliant blue plasma bolt that would have vaporized a city if it had reached Earth's surface. It never got the chance. A human destroyer, barely 1/10 the size of the Dominion vessel, fired a countershot that intersected the plasma mid-flight. The two energies collided in a flash of light that momentarily outshone the sun. Krell stood on his bridge, staring at his tactical display in disbelief. The sphere of black ships surrounding his small fleet had not only blocked his attack, but done so with casual precision. More alarming was what his sensors were finally telling him about those ships. "Report," he snapped at his tactical officer. The officer's voice shook slightly. "Ambassador, we count 2,347 vessels in immediate range. Mass readings suggest they're warships, not civilian craft. Weapon signatures are unknown, not in our database." "That's impossible," Krell said flatly. "Our intelligence showed this species has never left their homeworld." "Where did these ships come from?" No one on his bridge had an answer. The Dominion's information on Earth had been clear. A primitive species, pre-FTL, confined to a single planet. The database had even included recent surveillance footage showing Earth's crude chemical rockets that could barely reach their own moon. Those chemical rockets were a lie, carefully maintained by the Veil for 2 centuries. Every satellite Earth launched was deliberately primitive. Every space station was built with visible, outdated technology. The Veil had even gone so far as to stage failed Mars missions, ensuring that any Dominion scouts would see a species struggling with the most basic spaceflight. It had all been theater, and Krell had fallen for it completely. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Void's promise as the Dominion ships tried to process what they were facing. He had studied Dominion tactics for his entire adult life. He knew how they thought, how they fought, and most importantly, how they expected others to fight. The Dominion won battles through overwhelming force and intimidation. Their ships were massive, powerful, and designed to inspire terror. They expected enemies to either surrender immediately or fight conventionally, matching ship against ship. They had conquered 10,000 worlds using this approach. Humanity was about to teach them a different way, tactical. "Light them up," Marcus ordered calmly. The Black Armada had been designed with one principle in mind. Space is 3-dimensional, and humanity would use all 3 dimensions. While Dominion ships typically fought in roughly the same plane like naval vessels on an ocean, human ships moved in formations that utilized the full sphere of space around them. From above, below, and all sides, human weapons fire converged on Krell's 3 ships, but they weren't traditional energy weapons. Humanity had spent decades developing weapons, specifically designed to fight an enemy with superior numbers and firepower. The first salvo consisted of kinetic kill missiles, solid projectiles, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. They required no exotic energy sources, produced minimal signatures before launch, and delivered devastating impact force. Krell's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, barely slowed them down. 3 missiles struck the dominant Will's port side. The impacts created craters in the hull and sent shock waves through the ship's structure. Alarms blared across Krell's bridge. "Return fire," Krell shouted. "All batteries full spread." The Dominion ships unleashed their weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles. It was an impressive display of firepower that would have destroyed any conventional fleet. The human ships simply weren't where the Dominion weapons were aimed. Humanity's smaller, more maneuverable vessels moved in patterns that seemed almost prescient. They dodged and weaved through the incoming fire, their navigation computers running evasion programs developed over generations of practice. The few shots that did connect hit shields that, while not as strong as Dominion technology, were backed by point defense systems that could intercept most incoming fire. "They're too fast," Krell's tactical officer reported. "Our targeting systems can't lock on. They're using some kind of predictive algorithm we've never encountered." What the Dominion didn't know was that human ships were networked in ways that Dominion vessels weren't. Every ship in the Black Armada shared sensor data in real time, creating a composite picture of the battle that was far more detailed than what any individual ship could see. They moved not as independent vessels, but as a single organism with thousands of parts. Marcus watched the battle unfold on his displays and allowed himself a slight smile. Second wave, deploy quantum disruptors. A new type of weapon emerged from the human fleet. These were smaller missiles that didn't explode on impact. Instead, they attached themselves to the hull of Dominion ships and began emitting a specific frequency of radiation that interfered with the quantum field generators that powered Dominion shields. Within 30 seconds of the disruptors attaching, Krell's shields began to flicker and fail. His engineers shouted warnings about cascade failures in the shield grid. The technology was failing in ways they had never seen before. How are they doing this? Krell demanded. Our shields are state-of-the-art Dominion technology, which we've had 200 years to study, Marcus said to his own crew, though Krell couldn't hear him. Every time a Dominion ship passes through human space, we learn more. We know your technology better than you do. It was true. The Veil had spent 2 centuries collecting intelligence on the Dominion. Human scouts and stealth ships had shadowed Dominion fleets, recorded their maneuvers, and analyzed their technology. Dominion ships that suffered accidents in remote space sometimes discovered that their black boxes had been copied before rescue arrived. A few Dominion vessels that disappeared mysteriously had actually been captured and studied by human engineers before being quietly destroyed. The Dominion thought they ruled the galaxy, but they did so while being watched by invisible eyes that learned from every observation. With Krell's shields failing, the human fleet pressed their advantage, but they didn't go for the kill. Marcus had very specific orders from the Veil Council. Disable, don't destroy. They needed Krell alive to deliver a message. Target their engines and weapons, Marcus commanded. Precision strikes only. I want them dead in space but intact. The next wave of attacks was surgical. Human railguns, firing solid projectiles at tremendous velocity, struck the dominant Will's engine nacelles. The massive structures crumpled under the impacts. Secondary explosions rippled through the engineering sections as power systems overloaded. Krell's ship lurched violently. The artificial gravity failed, then kicked back in at the wrong setting, throwing everyone on the bridge to the floor. When Krell pulled himself back to his command chair, half his systems were offline. We need reinforcements, he said urgently. Send a distress signal to the nearest Dominion fleet base. Tell them we're under attack by an unknown force of significant capability. His communications officer worked frantically at her station, then looked up with fear in her eyes. Sir, they're jamming us. Every frequency, every channel. We can't transmit anything beyond a few thousand kilometers. Marcus watched the Dominion ship struggle and felt no satisfaction, only grim purpose. Communications, open a channel to the flagship, visual and audio. A moment later, his face appeared on every screen aboard the dominant Will. Krell, floating near his command chair in the flickering gravity, found himself looking at the human who commanded this impossible fleet. Ambassador Krell, Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who held all the advantages. Your ships are disabled. Your weapons are offline. Your reinforcements cannot hear your calls. This engagement is over. Who are you? Krell demanded. Our intelligence said. Your intelligence, Marcus interrupted, was designed to be wrong. We made sure of that. Everything you think you know about humanity is a lie we carefully maintained for 200 years. On Earth, billions of people watched the confrontation on every screen. The Veil had made the decision to broadcast everything. The secret was already revealed, and humanity deserved to see what had been built to protect them. In living rooms and offices, on street corners and in government chambers, people watched as one of their own faced down an alien ambassador. Many were shocked to learn about the void colonies. Others were angry about the deception, but all of them felt a surge of pride as they watched the human admiral dominate the conversation. Marcus continued speaking to Krell, his words carefully chosen. You came to Earth and demanded our surrender. You gave us 72 hours to submit or die. You treated us like primitives because that's what we wanted you to think we were. But we are not primitive, Ambassador. We are patient. He gestured, and the tactical display behind him lit up, showing not just the ships in Earth's orbit, but a map of human space, 500 worlds, spread across 200 light-years. While the Dominion built an empire through conquest, we built ours through silence. While you counted your 10,000 worlds openly, we hid 500 in the darkness. While you believed we were alone on Earth, 40 billion humans lived in places you never knew to look. Krell stared at the map, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. It was impossible. No species could hide an empire of this scale. And yet the evidence was surrounding his ship, guns pointed at his hull. Why? Krell asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why hide? Because we learned what happens to species that attract your attention, Marcus replied, his voice cold. We have recordings of what the Dominion does to worlds that resist. We've seen the ashes of civilizations you destroyed. We decided that Earth would never be one of them. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes hard. So we hit Earth and built this. He gestured to the fleet surrounding them. An armada you never saw coming. Ships designed specifically to fight yours. Tactics developed over generations to counter everything you do. We studied you, Ambassador. We learned everything about you, and you never even knew we existed. The reality of the situation was settling over Krell now. The Dominion had been outplayed on a scale that was hard to comprehend. An entire species had hidden from them for centuries, all while building the capability to challenge Dominion supremacy. What happens now? Krell asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. Now you carry a message. Your ship will be repaired enough to reach the nearest Dominion base. You will tell your superiors exactly what you found here. You will explain that humanity claims a sphere of space 200 light-years in radius, centered on Earth. You will inform them that this space is now an exclusion zone. Any Dominion ship that enters it will be destroyed. The Dominion will never accept this, Krell said. You're demanding territory from an empire of 10,000 worlds. They'll send a war fleet that will face the full might of a species that spent 200 years preparing for exactly that. Marcus finished. We're not asking for your acceptance, Ambassador. We're not negotiating. We're stating facts. This space belongs to humanity. Come here again, and you'll face consequences that your empire can't afford. To emphasize the point, Marcus gave another order. Tactical demonstration shot. Target the asteroid at coordinate 77 Alpha. In the distance, visible on Krell's sensors, was a large asteroid, maybe 3 kilometers across. A single human ship fired what looked like a small missile. The weapon struck the asteroid and seemed to vanish inside it. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the asteroid exploded from within, breaking apart into thousands of fragments as if it had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Gravity disruption warhead, Marcus explained. It creates a localized gravitational anomaly that tears matter apart from the inside. We have thousands of them. They work just as well on ships as they do on asteroids. Krell said nothing. What could he say? His small fleet had been defeated in less than an hour. His shields had been bypassed by technology he didn't understand. His ships were disabled by weapons that were specifically designed to counter Dominion advantages. And the humans were showing off capabilities that suggested they had many more surprises in reserve. You'll be released within the hour, Marcus said. Consider yourself fortunate. We could have destroyed you without warning. Let you join all those other species your empire has murdered. Instead, we're giving you a chance to prevent a larger war. The question is whether your leaders are wise enough to take it. The transmission ended. Krell slumped in his chair, staring at the dead screens around him. His crew worked frantically to restore basic systems, but their eyes kept flickering to the viewports where thousands of human ships maintained their positions around the crippled Dominion vessels. On Earth, the reaction was electric. The revelation of the Void colonies, the existence of the Black Armada, and the casual defeat of an alien empire's representative sent shockwaves through every society. But underneath the shock was something else. A fierce pride that humanity had been so clever, so patient, and ultimately so powerful. In the operations center beneath the Swiss Alps, Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of relief. The first battle was won, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would not accept this defeat quietly. Marcus Chen knew it too. As he watched Krell's damaged ships begin their slow limp out of human space, he spoke quietly to his second-in-command. They'll be back. With everything they have. Yes, sir. What are your orders? Marcus looked at Earth on his display. That precious blue world that his ancestors had left generations ago to protect. We prepare. And we make sure that when they come back, they regret it even more than they regret coming here the first time. The Black Armada remained on station, a silent guardian over humanity's cradle, and waited for the storm that was surely coming. Ambassador Krell's damaged flagship limped into Dominion space 3 weeks after the humiliating defeat at Earth. His crew had managed to restore enough functionality to reach the nearest major base, but the ship would never fly again without extensive repairs. The scars of human weapons marked every surface of the hull, a testament to how thoroughly they had been outmatched. The Dominion Council received Krell's report in a chamber designed to inspire awe and fear. 47 representatives from the most powerful species in the Empire sat in tiered seats surrounding a central platform. At the highest tier sat War Master Thok, Supreme Commander of all Dominion military forces. Thok was a Kragnath, a species that had evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world. He stood over 3 meters tall, with thick armor plates covering his body and 6 eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously. He had commanded Dominion forces for 60 years and had never lost a campaign. He listened to Krell's report in silence, his expression unreadable. When Krell finished describing the human fleet and their capabilities, Thok stood. "Let me understand this correctly," Thok said, his voice a deep rumble that carried through the chamber. "You encountered a species that our intelligence classified as primitive. This species revealed a hidden empire of 500 worlds. They deployed a fleet of thousands of advanced warships. They defeated your escort force in less than an hour. And then they released you to deliver an ultimatum demanding we abandon a 200 light-year sphere of space." "That is correct, War Master," Krell replied, knowing how absurd it sounded. Murmurs filled the council chamber. Several representatives were outraged. Others were skeptical. A few looked thoughtful, even concerned. Counselor Vesh, a diplomat from a species that valued caution over aggression, spoke up. "If this report is accurate, we face a species that has been observing us for centuries without our knowledge. They specifically designed their military to counter our capabilities. This suggests intelligence and planning on a scale we rarely encounter." "It suggests deception," Thok countered. "They hid like prey animals afraid to face us openly." "Or they hid like predators," Vesh replied quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for immediate retaliation. The Dominion could not allow this insult to stand. Others counseled caution, pointing out that a species capable of hiding an empire for 2 centuries might have other surprises waiting. A few even suggested accepting the human demands, arguing that 200 light-years of space was a small price to pay to avoid a potentially costly war. Thok listened to all of them, then made his decision. "The Dominion does not negotiate with prey. We do not abandon territory because some upstart species makes threats. We will assemble a war fleet and crush this human infestation. I will personally command the operation." The council voted. 32 members supported war, 15 opposed. The decision was made. Within days, orders went out across Dominion space. Ships were recalled from patrol duties. Reserve forces were activated. Shipyards accelerated production. Thok planned to assemble a fleet of 5,000 vessels, the largest military force the Dominion had deployed in over a century. Word of the buildup reached human intelligence networks within a week. The Veil had informants throughout Dominion space, carefully placed over decades. Some were humans who had infiltrated alien societies using advanced disguises. Others were members of species who had their own reasons to oppose the Dominion. All of them reported the same thing. Thok was coming, and he was bringing overwhelming force. Sarah Chen received the intelligence reports in her operations center and immediately convened the Veil Council. The holographic projections showed council members from both Earth and the Void colonies, united for the first time in open conference. "They're committing 5,000 ships," Sarah reported, 3 times the size of our entire fleet. War Master Thok himself will command. They plan to enter human space in approximately 3 months. "Can we win?" asked Marcus Chen, joining the call from New Prometheus, where his fleet was undergoing rapid resupply and repair. "In a straight fight?" "No," answered Admiral Jessica Okoye, commander of the 2nd Fleet Group. "We hurt them at Earth because we had surprise, superior position, and only 3 ships to fight. 5,000 ships is a different challenge entirely." "Then we don't fight them straight," said Marcus. "We've been preparing for this scenario for 200 years. It's time to show them what humans can really do." The strategy that emerged from that meeting was unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced. Humanity would not defend static positions or meet the enemy fleet in open battle. Instead, they would turn human space itself into a weapon. Over the next 3 months, the Void colonies mobilized completely. Every human world contributed to the war effort. Factories that had been built in asteroid belts and hidden in nebulas went into overdrive. Ships that had been kept in reserve were activated and crewed. And most importantly, the infrastructure of human space was weaponized in ways the Dominion couldn't imagine. On the colony world of Sanctuary, orbital stations that appeared to be simple habitats were revealed to have secondary purposes. Hidden within their structures were massive railgun systems, capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. These stations had been built over decades, their true purpose known only to a few. In the asteroid belt around New Prometheus, rocks that had been hollowed out for mining revealed themselves to be enormous missile silos. Each one contained hundreds of weapons waiting silently in the dark, along the likely routes into human space. Navigation buoys that supposedly marked safe passage points were actually sophisticated sensor platforms and weapons deployment systems. Any ship passing too close would find itself targeted by ordnance that had been pre-positioned years before. Most ingeniously, humanity had seeded entire regions of space with what looked like ordinary ice and rock debris. In reality, these were smart mines, self-propelled weapons that would remain dormant until activated by the right signal, then converge on enemy ships in swarms. The Dominion's advantage in ship numbers was about to become irrelevant. You can't fight territory when the territory fights back. Meanwhile, on Earth, the world was transforming. The revelation of the void colonies had shattered centuries of assumptions. People demanded answers from governments that had kept the secret. There were protests, investigations, and endless debates, but there was also unity. When the news broke that the Dominion was sending a war fleet, Earth rallied. For the first time in history, the homeworld's population understood that they were part of something larger. The Voidborn who had lived in darkness to protect Earth were no longer distant strangers. They were family. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, wanting to join the fight. Scientists offered their expertise, factories retooled for war production. Earth might have been kept ignorant for 2 centuries, but now that the truth was revealed, the homeworld proved that the old fighting spirit of humanity still burned bright. 3 months after the defeat at Earth, War Master Thok's armada gathered at the edge of Dominion space. 5,000 ships representing the might of an empire that had conquered 10,000 worlds. Thok stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable dominance, and looked at the tactical display with satisfaction. "The humans will learn what it means to defy us," he told his command staff. "We will sweep through their territory, destroy their colonies, and when we reach their homeworld, we will make an example that the galaxy will never forget." His fleet entered FTL, heading for the coordinates where human space began. The journey would take 2 weeks. Thok spent the time reviewing the intelligence on human capabilities and planning his attack. He was thorough, professional, and confident. He had crushed rebellions before. This would be no different. He was wrong. The Dominion fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of human space and immediately encountered the first surprise. The region was empty. No human ships waited to meet them. No defensive stations guarded the border. There was nothing but the cold vacuum of space and distant stars. "Where are they?" Thok demanded. "Our intelligence said they had colonies in this region." His sensor officer checked her readings. "Sir, I'm detecting what appear to be abandoned facilities on several nearby asteroids. No life signs, no power signatures. They've evacuated." "They're running," one of Thok's advisors said with satisfaction. "They know they can't stand against us." But Thok was not so sure. He had read the reports of the Earth engagement carefully. The humans had shown planning and patience. Running didn't fit their pattern. "Advance cautiously," he ordered. "Full sensor sweeps. I want to know what's out there." The fleet moved deeper into human space, following the most direct route toward Earth. They passed abandoned mining stations and empty habitats. Every installation they found had been stripped of anything valuable and left as a hollow shell. "It's a trap," Counselor Vesh said from his position aboard the fleet. He had insisted on accompanying the expedition, arguing that diplomacy should be attempted before destruction. "They're leading us somewhere. Let them," Thok replied. "Our force is large enough to handle any ambush. Continue the advance." They were 3 days into human territory when the first attack came. It didn't come from ships. It came from the empty space itself. What had appeared to be ordinary debris fields suddenly came alive. Thousands of objects that sensors had dismissed as ice and rock revealed themselves to be weapons. They lit their drives and swarmed toward the Dominion fleet like angry insects. "Evasive action," Thok ordered. But the mines were too many and too fast. They struck ships throughout the fleet, attaching themselves to hulls and detonating. Individual explosions were small, but there were so many of them that the cumulative damage was severe. Within 10 minutes, the attack ended as suddenly as it began. The surviving mines went dormant again, disappearing back into the sensor noise of the debris field. Thok's fleet had lost 47 ships and dozens more were damaged. "Status report," Thok demanded through clenched teeth. "Hull breaches on multiple vessels. Casualties reported across the fleet. Sir, we never detected those mines. They were hidden among ordinary debris using some kind of signature masking we've never encountered." Thok stared at the tactical display, reassessing his enemy. They didn't evacuate because they were running. They evacuated to turn their territory into a killing field. The advance continued, but now every piece of debris, every asteroid, every seemingly empty stretch of space was a potential threat. The fleet's progress slowed to a crawl as sensors worked overtime to identify hazards. Then the orbital platforms activated. What had appeared to be abandoned stations suddenly powered up, their hidden railguns firing tungsten projectiles at tremendous velocity. The shots came from multiple directions, making defense almost impossible. More ships were damaged or destroyed. Thok ordered some vessels to break formation and eliminate the platforms, but as soon as they approached, the stations went dark again, making targeting difficult. "They're using the entire region as a weapon system," Thok's tactical officer reported. "Every installation, every piece of infrastructure has a military purpose. We're not fighting a fleet, sir. We're fighting their entire civilization." It was a realization that chilled even Thok's warrior heart. The Dominion fought ship-to-ship battles. They conquered worlds through bombardment and occupation. But the humans had designed their entire territorial infrastructure to be hostile to invaders. There was no front line, no clear target, just endless layers of threats that could activate from anywhere. And still, the human fleet itself had not appeared. They were letting their territory do the fighting for them, bleeding the Dominion fleet through 1,000 small cuts. Thok made a decision. "We're adapting our route. Plot a course that avoids all human installations. We go around their defenses and strike directly at Earth." It seemed like a good plan, but the humans had anticipated it. Every alternate route was just as heavily defended as the main one. Some were worse. Thok's fleet found themselves navigating a maze where every path was lined with weapons. A week into the campaign, Thok had lost over 300 ships and hadn't even seen a human vessel. His fleet was still powerful, still capable of destroying Earth if they reached it, but the losses were mounting and morale was dropping. Then finally the human fleet appeared, but not where Thok expected. They didn't meet him at the border or defend a specific world. Instead, they hit his supply lines. Dominion fleets required regular resupply: fuel, ammunition, provisions. The logistics train stretched back to Dominion space, and it was vulnerable. Human ships, smaller and faster than their Dominion counterparts, struck the supply convoys in lightning raids and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Within days, Thok's fleet was running low on critical supplies. He was forced to slow his advance even further, detaching ships to guard the supply routes. This made his main force weaker, and the supply convoys not much safer. The humans just adapted, hitting targets that were less defended. "They're not trying to destroy us in one battle," Counselor Vesh observed. "They're trying to bleed us dry slowly. Death by 1,000 cuts." Thok's frustration grew with each passing day. He commanded the largest fleet ever assembled for a Dominion campaign, and he was being defeated by an enemy he could barely find. The humans refused to fight fair, refused to meet him in open battle where his superior numbers would matter. Instead, they fought like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, turning their territory into a nightmare of hidden threats and sudden attacks. Every advantage the Dominion possessed, numbers, firepower, experience, seemed useless against an enemy who had spent 2 centuries learning how to fight exactly this kind of war. 2 months into the campaign, having lost over 800 ships and gained less than 50 light-years of territory, Thok made a fateful decision. He would force the humans to fight openly. He would threaten something they couldn't afford to lose. He ordered his fleet to plot a direct course to Earth regardless of cost. The humans would have to defend their homeworld. They would finally have to face him in the kind of battle he could win. It was exactly what humanity had been waiting for. Marcus Chen received the intelligence report and smiled grimly. "He's finally doing what we want. Let him come to Earth. We'll show him what happens when you threaten our cradle." The final battle was about to begin, and Thok had no idea how thoroughly he had been outplayed. The Sol system had been transformed into the most heavily defended location in human space. For 2 months, while Thok's fleet bled itself against the outer territories, humanity had prepared its ultimate defensive position. Earth would not fall. Not today. Not ever. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Void's Promise, positioned at the edge of the solar system with the full might of the Black Armada. Behind him, stretched across billions of kilometers of space, was the culmination of 2 centuries of planning. Every ship, every weapon, every human in the Void had gathered for this moment. "Status report," Marcus requested, his voice calm despite the enormity of what was coming. "All fleet elements in position," his tactical officer replied. "We have 4,200 ships ready for engagement. Orbital platforms around Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt are at full readiness. Smart mine fields are deployed along all projected approach vectors. Ground-based planetary defense systems are online." Marcus nodded. It wasn't just the fleet that would fight this battle. The entire solar system had become a weapon. Factories on Mars had been revealed to house massive particle beam emitters. The asteroid belt contained weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations for decades. Even Earth's moon had concealed defense batteries beneath its surface. On Earth itself, billions of people watched the skies and waited. The revelation of the Void colonies had been shocking, but the revelation that their own solar system had been secretly militarized for generations was even more astounding. Weapons that could fire into space had been hidden beneath mountains and ocean floors. Satellite networks that people thought were for communications actually included targeting systems and weapons deployment platforms. The veil had kept Earth ignorant, but it had never left Earth defenseless. Now, as the Dominion fleet approached, every human on the homeworld understood that they were part of something greater than themselves. The Voidborn were coming home to protect them, and Earth itself would fight alongside its hidden children. Sarah Chen watched from the operations center in Switzerland, surrounded by screens showing every aspect of the defensive preparation. She had spent her entire life maintaining the secret that protected Earth. Now that secret had become a sword, and she would see it used. "Dominion fleet detected," a sensor operator announced. "Range 3 light hours. 4,100 ships. Configuration suggests an aggressive direct approach." "Let them come," Sarah said quietly. "We're ready." War Master Thok's fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of the Sol system, and for the first time in weeks he felt confident. This was what he understood: a direct assault on an enemy stronghold. No more ambushes from hidden mines. No more raids on supply lines. Here the humans would have to stand and fight, and his superior numbers would finally matter. "Deploy in battle formation," Thok ordered. "Advance toward the inner system. Target priority is their homeworld." The Dominion fleet moved forward in a massive wave, over 4,000 ships in organized battle groups. It was an impressive sight, the kind of military display that had broken countless civilizations. Then space itself began to fight back. The first wave of attacks came from weapons platforms hidden in the outer solar system. They had been placed there decades ago, disguised as scientific research stations or mining facilities. Now they revealed their true purpose: firing kinetic weapons and directed energy beams at the advancing Dominion fleet. "Return fire," Thok commanded. "Destroy those platforms!" But for every platform destroyed, 2 more activated. The humans had seeded the outer system with hundreds of defensive positions, each one automated and capable of operating independently. Destroying them all would take time the Dominion didn't have, and while his ships dealt with the platforms, the mines activated. These weren't the simple contact weapons from the outer territories. These were sophisticated hunter-killers that could track targets, coordinate with each other, and adapt their approach based on defensive responses. Thousands of them swarmed toward the Dominion fleet. Point defense systems shot down hundreds, but there were too many. They struck ships throughout Thok's formation, their detonations creating cascading failures in shields and hull integrity. "They've turned their entire solar system into a fortress," Thok's tactical officer reported, strain evident in his voice. "We're taking losses before we even engage their fleet." "Push through," Thok ordered. "We have the numbers. They can't stop us all." He was right that they couldn't stop every ship, but they didn't need to. The goal wasn't to destroy the Dominion fleet entirely. It was to damage it enough that when the actual battle began, the outcome would be certain. The Dominion fleet pressed forward, past the outer system defenses and into the inner solar system where Earth awaited. They had lost 300 ships to the automated defenses, but over 3,000 remained. Thok could still win this. Then the Black Armada revealed itself. The human ships didn't just appear. They erupted from hiding positions throughout the solar system in a carefully choreographed maneuver. Some had been waiting behind planets and moons. Others had been hiding in the asteroid belt, their signatures masked by the natural background radiation. Still more had been positioned in high orbit around Earth itself. In less than a minute, Thok found his fleet surrounded. Not by a numerical superior force, the humans still had fewer ships, but by a perfectly positioned tactical formation that controlled every angle of approach to Earth. Finally, Thok growled, "A real battle!" Marcus Chen watched the Dominion fleet's reaction and saw exactly what he expected. Thok was regrouping, organizing his ships into combat formations, preparing to use his numerical advantage to overwhelm the human defensive position. It was textbook Dominion tactics, which was precisely why it wouldn't work. "All units execute pattern Omega," Marcus commanded. The Black Armada didn't fight like a conventional fleet. Every ship was networked into a shared tactical system that allowed them to move as a single organism. They didn't have individual ship captains making independent decisions. They had a coordinated battle plan executed by thousands of vessels simultaneously. The pattern that unfolded was beautiful and terrible. Human ships moved in three-dimensional formations that constantly shifted, making it almost impossible for Dominion targeting systems to achieve solid locks. They used planets and moons as cover, swinging around them in gravitational slingshot maneuvers that allowed rapid position changes without excessive fuel expenditure, and their weapons were specifically designed to exploit Dominion weaknesses. The quantum disruptors that had disabled Krell's shields were deployed in massive quantities. Kinetic weapons fired from unexpected angles. Gravity disruption warheads created localized space-time distortions that wreaked havoc on Dominion ship formations. Most devastatingly, the humans used something the Dominion had never encountered before: coordinated drone swarms. Small, cheap, semi-autonomous craft that could be produced in enormous quantities and controlled by AI systems. They didn't replace human-crewed ships, but they multiplied the effective combat power of the fleet by orders of magnitude. Thok's ships found themselves fighting not just 4,000 human vessels, but 40,000 weapons platforms of various sizes, all working together with inhuman precision. "This is impossible," Thok's tactical officer shouted. "They're coordinating thousands of attack vectors simultaneously. No organic crew should be able to manage this level of complexity." "They're not trying to manage it," Counselor Vesh said from his position on the bridge. He had been watching the battle unfold with growing horror and understanding. They built systems that do it for them. They automated warfare itself. It was true. Humanity had spent 2 centuries developing battle management AI that could coordinate fleet-scale engagements while human commanders provided strategic oversight. It gave them a force multiplication factor that made their smaller numbers irrelevant. The battle raged for 6 hours. In that time, the Dominion fleet was systematically dismantled, not through any single overwhelming attack, but through thousands of precise strikes that exploited every weakness in Dominion ship design and tactical doctrine. Ships that tried to advance toward Earth found themselves targeted by orbital platforms that had perfect firing solutions. Vessels that attempted to flank were intercepted by human ships that seemed to anticipate their every move. The few Dominion vessels that managed to break through the defensive perimeter discovered that Earth's moon itself was armed, firing massive railgun projectiles that could crack a battleship in half. Thok's flagship, the Inevitable Dominance, was struck by 3 gravity disruption warheads simultaneously. The effects were catastrophic. Internal bulkheads buckled as localized gravity fields went haywire. Systems failed throughout the ship. The artificial gravity that kept the crew alive fluctuated wildly, making it impossible to function effectively. "We need to withdraw," Counselor Vesh urged, gripping his console as another impact rocked the ship. "We've lost over half our fleet. This battle cannot be won. The Dominion does not retreat," Thok roared. But even as he said it, he knew the truth.
He had been outmatched from the beginning.
The humans hadn't just prepared a defense. They had prepared a killing field specifically designed to destroy an enemy exactly like him. A transmission request came through from the human fleet. Thok wanted to ignore it, but Vesh activated the channel before he could object. Admiral Marcus Chen's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, through the viewports of his bridge, the battle continued. But Marcus looked calm, almost relaxed. "War Master Thok," Marcus said, "your fleet is broken. You've lost 1,800 ships in the last 6 hours. Your supply lines are cut. Your reinforcements can't reach you. This battle is over. Then finish it, Thok snarled. Destroy us if you can. We could, Marcus agreed. We have enough firepower left to eliminate every ship in your fleet. But we're not going to. Do you know why? Thok said nothing, his jaw clenched in fury and humiliation. Because we're not the Dominion, Marcus continued. We don't conquer. We don't destroy civilizations. We don't make examples of the defeated. We defend what's ours and we make sure threats never return. Your fleet will be allowed to withdraw. You'll be given safe passage out of human space. In return, you'll deliver a message. What message? Besh asked when Thok remained silent. Marcus's expression hardened. That human space, a sphere 200 light-years in radius centered on Earth, is forbidden territory to the Dominion. Any ship that enters will be destroyed without warning. Any attempt at retaliation will be met with force. We will not invade your empire, but we will defend ours with everything we have. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into the camera. You came here with 5,000 ships, War Master. You're leaving with barely 2,000. Your empire rules 10,000 worlds, but you couldn't conquer 500 of ours. Think about that. Think about what it means that a species you thought was primitive has humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy. Then think about this. We've been watching you for 200 years. We know your ship designs, your tactics, your strategies. We've studied every battle you've ever fought. But you know almost nothing about us. You've seen some of our capabilities today, but you have no idea what else we've developed, what other weapons we have in reserve, what other surprises we've prepared. Marcus's voice dropped to something almost gentle. Go back to your empire, War Master. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity offered peace once before and you rejected it. Tell them that we're offering peace again now on our terms. But if you come here a third time, we won't be so merciful. The transmission ended. Thok stood on his ruined bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his ambitions, and knew that he had been beaten by an enemy he had underestimated from the beginning. Give the order, he said quietly. All ships withdraw from human space. The remains of the Dominion fleet limped away from Sol, harried by human ships that ensured they kept moving, but didn't finish them off. It was a calculated mercy. Survivors would spread the word better than martyrs. As the last Dominion vessel crossed the boundary of human space, Marcus allowed himself to relax for the first time in weeks. Around him, his bridge crew erupted in cheers. Throughout the fleet, celebrations began. They had done it. They had protected Earth. On the homeworld itself, billions of people watched the departing Dominion ships and felt a mixture of relief, pride, and wonder. They had learned in the span of a few months that they were not alone in the universe, that their species had hidden an empire in the stars, and that when threatened, humanity could fight and win against overwhelming odds. Sarah Chen stood in the operations center and felt tears streaming down her face. 2 centuries of work, 2 centuries of secrets and sacrifice. It had all been worth it. 3 weeks later, the Dominion Council convened to hear War Master Thok's formal report. The chamber was silent as he described the defeat in detail, hiding nothing, accepting full responsibility. When he finished, the council debated for 2 days. Some still argued for continued war. Others pointed out that humanity had proven itself capable of not just defending its territory, but potentially threatening Dominion space if pushed too far. In the end, pragmatism won. The Dominion formally recognized human space as an exclusion zone. A treaty was drafted, signed, and distributed throughout both empires. The war was over before it had truly begun, but the consequences rippled outward. Other species who had suffered under Dominion rule heard about the humans who had hidden an empire, and then defeated one of the largest invasion fleets ever assembled. Suddenly, resistance didn't seem so futile. If humanity could do it, maybe others could too. The Dominion's aura of invincibility was shattered. They still ruled 10,000 worlds, but now everyone knew they could be challenged. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, all because one species had been patient enough to hide for 2 centuries, and clever enough to turn their entire civilization into a weapon. For humanity, life began to change rapidly. The veil was officially dissolved, its work complete. Earth and the Void colonies began the process of integration, learning to exist as a united civilization rather than a hidden one. 3 months after the battle, Admiral Marcus Chen finally got to visit Earth. He stood in a forest in northern Canada, breathing unfiltered air for the first time in his life. Rain fell from a gray sky, each drop a tiny miracle to someone who had spent his entire life in recycled environments. Sarah Chen, who had come to meet him, stood nearby under an umbrella. She watched her distant cousin experience Earth with the wonder of a child and smiled. "Was it worth it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Everything we did. Everyone who lived and died in the void, never seeing this. Was it worth it?" Sarah looked up at the sky, thinking of all the people who had sacrificed for this moment. The first colonists who left Earth forever. The generations born in darkness. The soldiers who fought and died defending worlds they'd never seen. "Look around you," she said. "Earth is safe. Our people are free. We're no longer hiding. We stood up to an empire and won." "Yes, Marcus, it was worth it." Marcus closed his eyes and let the rain fall on his face. Somewhere above, invisible in the clouds, the Black Armada maintained its eternal vigil. The Voidborn who crewed those ships would probably never get to stand in the rain like this. They would live and die in space, watching the darkness for threats, but they did it willingly, knowing that their sacrifice protected not just Earth but all of humanity. They were the guardians in the void, the silent watchers, the hidden shield that had become a sword when needed. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at Sarah. "What happens now?" "Now," Sarah smiled. "Now we live. We build, we grow, but we never forget what we learned. Patience can be a weapon, silence can be a strategy, and sometimes the best way to protect something is to make the galaxy think you're not worth attacking. Until you are," Marcus added. "Until you are," Sarah agreed. High above them, unseen and unheard, the ships of the Black Armada continued their patrol. Humanity had won this battle, but the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. The Voidborn would remain vigilant, watching the darkness, ready to defend their cradle against any threat. Earth slept peacefully, no longer ignorant of the dangers beyond its skies, but safe in the knowledge that it was protected by children it had never known it had. The veil was gone, but its legacy remained. A species united by the understanding that survival sometimes required sacrifice, and that the greatest strength was the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect those you loved. The message humanity had sent to the galaxy was clear and would not be forgotten. We do not seek war, but the void is ours and we remember every threat. Come to our cradle in peace or do not come at all. The stars watched in silence, and humanity watched back, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, ready for whatever the future might bring. In the weeks and months that followed the battle, the transformation of human civilization accelerated. The void colonies, which had existed in isolation for so long, began to open diplomatic relations with Earth. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchanges began. Families separated by generations were reunited through communication networks that no longer needed to be hidden. The process was not always smooth. Earth's population struggled to accept that they had been kept ignorant for 2 centuries. Protests erupted in major cities, demanding accountability from governments that had maintained the veil. Some people felt betrayed. Others felt grateful. Most felt both. The Voidborn faced their own challenges. Many had grown up believing Earth was a sacred place that needed protection, only to discover that the homeworld was full of ordinary people with ordinary problems. Some void colonists felt disconnected from Earth's cultures, viewing themselves as a separate branch of humanity entirely. But beneath the friction, there was also recognition. Earth's people saw in the Voidborn a dedication and sacrifice that humbled them. The Void colonists saw in Earth's population the diversity and vitality that reminded them why their ancestors had chosen to protect the homeworld in the first place. Admiral Marcus Chen became something of a celebrity, though he hated the attention. He gave speeches about unity and the importance of working together. He met with world leaders and helped coordinate the integration of void military forces with Earth's defensive systems. But his favorite moments were the quiet ones, walking through cities he had only seen in history books, experiencing the simple pleasures of planetary life. One evening, he stood on a beach in Australia, watching the sun set over the ocean. Beside him stood Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, one of his officers who had also been born in the void. "It's beautiful," Yuki said softly. "I've seen 1,000 sunsets through viewports on 100 different worlds, but this is different." "It's home," Marcus replied, "even for those of us who've never been here before." This is where we came from, where it all started. Yuki was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that was on many void-born minds. Do you think we'll ever truly belong here? We're so different from them. We think differently. We grew up with different values. Marcus considered this. I think we're all human, Yuki. Earthborn, void-born. We're all part of the same family. We have different experiences, but that makes us stronger, not weaker. They need us to help them understand the galaxy. We need them to remind us what we're protecting. Far from Earth, on the edges of human space, the work of vigilance continued. Captain Jennifer Rodriguez commanded a patrol group monitoring the boundary with Dominion territory. Her ships moved silently through the void, sensors always active, watching for any sign that the Dominion might be preparing another assault. So far, there had been nothing. The treaty was holding. Dominion ships gave human space a wide berth, and the few communications that did occur were formal and respectful. The Dominion had learned its lesson, but Rodriguez and her crew remained alert. They had studied history. They knew that peace treaties could be broken. The Dominion might be quiet now, but empires had long memories and longer grudges. Contact, her sensor officer announced one day. Single vessel Dominion configuration approaching the boundary. Rodriguez tensed. Battle stations. Identify the ship. It's a civilian transport, Captain. No weapon signatures. They're broadcasting a request for communication. Curious, Rodriguez opened the channel. The face that appeared on her screen was not one she recognized, but the species was clearly Dominion member. Human vessel, the alien said, speaking through a translator. I am Captain Valesh of the transport ship Morningstar. I request permission to enter human space. Rodriguez frowned. State your business. The treaty allows only diplomatic vessels into our territory. I am carrying refugees, Valesh replied. 300 members of my species who wish to escape Dominion rule. We have heard that humanity does not conquer, does not enslave. We seek asylum. Rodriguez felt her breath catch. This was new. This was something no one had anticipated. Stand by, she told Valesh, then opened a secure channel to Fleet Command. The request went up the chain of command quickly. Within hours, it reached the highest levels of human government. Earth's leaders, Void colony representatives and military commanders convened an emergency session. If we accept them, we set a precedent, argued one Earth representative. We could have thousands, millions of refugees seeking protection. We might not be able to support them all. If we refuse them, we contradict everything we said we stood for, countered a Void colony leader. We told the Dominion we weren't like them. Now we have a chance to prove it. The debate was intense but brief. In the end, humanity made a choice that would define its character in the eyes of the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez received her orders and smiled. Morningstar, you are cleared to enter human space. Proceed to New Prometheus. You will be met by representatives who will assist with your resettlement. Welcome. The transport crossed into human territory, the first of what would become many. Word spread through Dominion space that humanity offered refuge to those fleeing oppression. It started as a trickle, a ship here, a small group there. But over time it grew into a steady stream. The Dominion protested, calling it theft of their citizens. Humanity replied that they only accepted those who came willingly, seeking freedom. The Dominion could not argue against that without admitting they held their people by force rather than loyalty. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, humanity had changed in ways both large and small. The void colonies and Earth had merged into a true unified civilization. The Black Armada had evolved from a secret defense force into an open military that also served humanitarian missions. Human space had become known as a place of refuge, innovation, and stubborn independence. Sarah Chen, now retired from her position in what had been the Veil, wrote a memoir about the 200-year secret. It became a bestseller on both Earth and the Void colonies. In it, she addressed the question that everyone asked. Had they been right to keep Earth ignorant? Her answer was nuanced. The Veil had made choices that were morally complicated. They had deceived billions of people for generations. They had denied Earth's population the right to know about the larger universe and make their own choices about how to engage with it. But they had also kept Earth safe during a time when it had no way to defend itself. They had built a civilization in the void that was strong enough to protect the homeworld when the threat finally came. They had made hard choices with the best intentions, sacrificing transparency for security. History will judge whether we were right, Sarah wrote in the final chapter. But I can say this with certainty. We did what we believed was necessary to protect something precious. Earth and all the people on it survived because of the veil. That doesn't make every choice we made correct, but it means we succeeded in our primary mission. And now, with the truth revealed, humanity can move forward together, stronger for having both Earth's diversity and the Void's determination. Admiral Marcus Chen eventually settled on Earth, building a home in New Zealand, but he kept his commission and frequently returned to space to visit his crews. He had found a balance between his two worlds belonging to both Earth and the Void. One night, 10 years after the battle, he stood in his backyard and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Black Armada still patrolled. Somewhere in the darkness, his former crew members kept watch. The Voidborn still stood guard, though now they did so openly with Earth's full knowledge and gratitude. His daughter, born on Earth but carrying the heritage of the Void in her genes, came to stand beside him. She was 5 years old and endlessly curious about the stars. "Daddy, why do you look at the sky so much?" she asked. Marcus smiled and picked her up so she could see better. "Because that's where I come from, sweetheart. And that's where some very brave people are right now, making sure we stay safe." "Will I go there someday?" "Maybe," Marcus said. "If you want to. The Void isn't just for hiding anymore. Now it's for exploring, for building, for living. You can go anywhere you want, be anything you want. That's the gift your ancestors gave you." The girl thought about this, then pointed at a particularly bright star. "What's that one?" "That's New Prometheus," Marcus told her. "That's where I was born, where your grandmother still lives. Would you like to visit someday?" "Yes," the girl exclaimed. "Can we go soon?" Marcus laughed. "Soon," he promised. "We'll go soon." He held his daughter close and looked up at the stars, no longer seeing them as a hiding place or a battlefield, but as a frontier full of possibility. Humanity had been tested and had emerged stronger. They had learned that patience could be a weapon, that unity was a shield, and that sometimes the greatest victories came not from conquest, but from defending what you loved. The Void still held mysteries and dangers. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only explored a tiny fraction of it. There would be other challenges, other threats, other moments when the Black Armada would need to deploy and fight. But for now there was peace. Earth was safe. The Void colonies thrived. And humanity, both Earthborn and Voidborn, looked to the future with hope rather than fear. In the darkness between stars, the ships of the Black Armada continued their eternal patrol. They were no longer hidden, no longer secret, but they remained vigilant. The galaxy now knew that humanity existed, knew what they were capable of, and knew that threatening Earth came with consequences. The message remained clear, carved not just into the consciousness of the Dominion but into the awareness of every species that heard the story. Humanity protects its own. Come in peace and be welcomed. Come in war and be destroyed. The choice is yours. And in every human heart, whether born on Earth or in the depths of space, burn the same truth. We are one people, united by our past, strengthened by our differences, and ready for whatever future the stars might bring. The Empire had demanded Earth's surrender. From the Void, humanity's Black Armada had descended, and the galaxy would never forget.